5 shots. That is the distinct, rhythmic sound of a life ending, or at least, that's what it sounded like to everyone in the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel that night. When the smoke cleared, the most feared man in New York, Dante Moretti, wasn't looking at his enemies. He wasn't looking at his bodyguards. He was on his knees, his pristine tuxedo soaked in blood, holding the hand of a woman he had never truly looked at before. She was just the maid. Nobody. Until she took 5 bullets meant for the woman he loved most in the world, his mother. What happened in that ballroom was a tragedy. But what happened next? That is the secret they tried to bury. This is the story of Sofia Valenti and the sacrifice that brought an empire to its knees. The chandeliers of the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan didn't just sparkle, they screamed wealth. It was a kaleidoscope of diamonds, silk, and the heavy metallic scent of power. This was the 60th birthday gala for Lucia Moretti, the matriarch of the Moretti crime family. To the outside world, she was a philanthropist, a grandmother, a widow of a shipping magnate. To the people in this room, the politicians, the judges, and the rival dons smiling through gritted teeth, she was the Iron Queen, and her son Dante Moretti was the king. Sofia Valenti adjusted the strap of her black serving apron, her knuckles white. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't a dazzling socialite in a backless red gown like the woman currently hanging off Dante's arm. Sofia was the help. Specifically, she was the daughter of the Moretti estate's head housekeeper. She had grown up in the shadows of the Moretti mansion, watching Dante from behind banisters and kitchen doors for 20 years. "Champagne, miss?" Sofia asked, her voice barely a whisper, offering a flute to a woman whose diamond necklace cost more than Sofia's entire life earnings. The woman took it without looking at her. That was Sofia's superpower, invisibility. Across the room, Dante stood near the orchestra, his posture rigid. He was 32, carved from marble and resentment. His dark hair was swept back, his eyes colors of a stormy Atlantic Ocean, scanning the perimeter. He wasn't enjoying the party, he was hunting. "Rico," Dante murmured, not moving his lips. His underboss, a stocky man with a scar running through his eyebrow, stepped closer. "The west entrance. I saw a waiter come in without a tray. Check it. Already on it, boss," Rico grunted. "Relax. It's your mother's night. The Sabatinis wouldn't dare strike here. Not with the senator present. Lorenzo Sabatini doesn't care about senators," Dante replied, his gaze drifting toward the center table where his mother, Lucia, sat like royalty. She was laughing, holding court, blissfully unaware that her son had tripled the sniper detail on the roof. Sofia moved through the crowd, collecting empty glasses. She felt a magnetic pull, as she always did, toward Dante. He looked tired, she thought. The lines around his eyes were deeper than they were last Christmas. She wanted to walk up to him, smooth that worry away, and tell him he could rest. But that was a fantasy. To him, she was just Sofia, the girl who knew how he took his coffee, black, 2 sugars, and who knew which shirts to starch. As the orchestra swelled into a waltz, Lucia Moretti stood up to give a toast. The room went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. "My friends," Lucia began, her voice steady and commanding. "Family is not just blood, it is loyalty. It is the wall that stands between us and the storm." Sofia, standing near the kitchen service doors, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She saw movement in her peripheral vision. It was subtle, a shift in the heavy velvet curtains behind the main stage, just 10 feet from where Lucia stood. Most people were watching Lucia. Dante was watching the west entrance. The bodyguards were watching the crowd. But Sofia was the invisible girl. She watched the things nobody else looked at. She saw the glimmer of a barrel. It wasn't a waiter. It was a man in a tuxedo that didn't fit right, stepping out from the curtain, raising a suppressed pistol. Time didn't slow down. That's a lie they tell in movies. Time sped up. It became a blur of instinct. Sofia dropped the tray of crystal glasses. The crash was deafening, shattering the silence of the toast. "Gun!" Dante roared, spinning around as the glass broke. But he was too far away. He was 30 feet out. The gunman was 10 feet away. Sofia didn't think. She didn't calculate the odds. She didn't think about her mother waiting for her back at the estate or the nursing degree she was studying for at night. She just saw the barrel pointed at Lucia's heart. Sophia ran. She threw herself not at the gunman, but into the space between the weapon and the matriarch. She was a blur of black uniform and white apron, a human shield hurling herself into the line of fire. Pop, 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 pop. 5 distinct sounds. Not loud bangs, but sickening, wet thuds. The force of the impact lifted Sophia off her feet. It felt like being hit by a sledgehammer 5 times in rapid succession. She spun in the air, her back arching, before she collapsed onto the polished marble floor. Lucia screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated horror. The ballroom erupted. Guests dove under tables. Bodyguards unleashed a hail of return fire. The assassin dropped, his chest riddled with holes before he could fire a 6th shot. But Dante heard none of it. The world had tunneled down to a single point. He sprinted across the room, sliding on his knees as he reached the pile of bodies. He shoved a bodyguard aside. "Mama, Mama, are you hit?" Lucia was shaking, covered in blood, but she shook her head, her eyes wide with shock. "No, no, Dante, it's not my blood." She pointed down. Lying at Lucia's feet, curled into a fetal position, was Sophia. The pristine white front of her apron was now a jagged map of crimson. Her breathing was wet and ragged, a terrible gurgling sound escaping her lips. Dante froze. For a second, his brain couldn't process it. Sophia, the housekeeper's daughter. He looked at his mother, then at the girl who had poured his coffee that morning, the girl who had ironed the shirt he was wearing right now. "Sophia," Dante whispered. He reached out, his hands hovering, terrified to touch her and cause more pain. Her eyes fluttered open. They were hazel, flecked with gold, rapidly losing focus. She looked up, and for the first time in 20 years, Dante Moretti was looking at her, really looking at her. She coughed, blood bubbling at the corner of her mouth. "Is she safe?" Dante felt something inside his chest crack. A wall he had built for decades shattered in an instant. He grabbed her hand, his grip tight, desperate. "She's safe. You saved her. Sophia, look at me. Stay with me." Sophia's voice was fading, drifting away like smoke. "I didn't want you to be sad." Her head lolled to the side, her hand went limp in his. "Medic!" Dante screamed, a sound so primal it tore his throat. He looked up at Rico, his face a mask of demonic fury and terrified desperation. "Get the car, now! Forget the ambulance, we're taking her to the private clinic. Move!" He scooped her up in his arms. She was terrifyingly light. The warmth of her blood soaked through his tuxedo jacket, staining his white shirt against his skin. He didn't care. He held her close against his chest, running through the panicked crowd of millionaires and politicians. "Don't you die on me," Dante growled into her hair, his voice breaking. "You do not get to die, Sophia. That is an order. Do you hear me?" But Sophia Valenti was already gone, lost in the darkness that was swallowing her whole. As Dante burst through the hotel doors into the cool New York night, carrying the broken body of the girl who loved him, he realized one thing with a clarity that terrified him. He didn't know anything about her. He didn't know her favorite color. He didn't know her dreams. He didn't know why she would throw her life away for his family. But if she survived this, he swore on his father's grave, he would spend the rest of his life finding out. And if she died? If she died, New York would burn. The waiting room of the Moretti private clinic in the Bronx was silent, save for the hum of the ventilation and the ticking of a clock that seemed to be mocking them. It was a sterile, cold place, usually reserved for made men who had been shot in turf wars. It wasn't meant for innocent girls in maid uniforms. Dante paced the hallway like a caged tiger. He had scrubbed the blood off his hands, but he could still feel it. It was sticky, phantom warmth on his palms. Lucia sat in a plastic chair, staring at the wall. The Iron Queen looked small, frail. She was holding a rosary, her lips moving in silent prayer. 5 bullets, Dante, Lucia said softly, breaking the silence. 3 in the abdomen, 1 in the shoulder, 1 grazing the lung, the doctor said. He said it's a miracle she arrived with a pulse. Dante stopped pacing. He turned to his mother. Who was the shooter? Sabatini's nephew, the youngest one. Carlo, Rico answered, stepping out of the elevator. He looked grim. We ID'd the body. It sends a message. They weren't just trying to kill Lucia, they were trying to wipe out the lineage. Carlo is dead, Dante said, his voice void of emotion. I want the rest of them, tonight. Dante. Lucia stood up, her voice sharp. Stop, stop, Dante's eyes flashed. They tried to kill you, Mama. And because of them, Sofia is in there fighting for her life. You want me to stop? I want you to wait, Lucia said, walking over to him. She placed a hand on his cheek. That girl in there. She didn't sacrifice herself so you could run out and get yourself killed in a blind rage. If you die tonight, her sacrifice means nothing. Dante clenched his jaw. He hated that she was right. He looked through the glass window of the ICU. Sofia was hooked up to a dozen machines. Tubes ran down her throat. Her skin was the color of parchment. Who is she really? Dante asked, almost to himself. I've seen her every day for years, but I don't know her. Lucia sighed. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, worn leather notebook. It was cheap, the kind you buy at a drugstore. I found this in her apron pocket when the nurses were cutting her clothes off, Lucia said. I thought you should see it. Dante took the notebook. It was stained with a single drop of dried blood on the cover. He opened it. He expected a diary, or a grocery list. Instead, he found drawings, beautiful, intricate charcoal sketches. The first page was a sketch of the Moretti garden in winter. The second was a drawing of Lucia, reading by the fire. The third was him. It was Dante, sitting on the balcony, smoking a cigarette. He remembered that night. It was 3 years ago. He had been grieving his father. He looked broken in the drawing, but somehow the artist had captured a sense of hope in his eyes that he hadn't felt himself. Underneath the drawing, in neat cursive, were the words, "He carries the weight of the world, but he forgets he doesn't have to carry it alone." Dante flipped the pages, his heart hammering against his ribs. There were dozens of them. Sketches of him laughing, a rare sight. Sketches of him arguing, sketches of him sleeping in the library chair. It wasn't the obsession of a stalker. It was the observation of someone who loved him, deeply, quietly, and without expectation. She sees you, Dante, Lucia whispered. Better than I do. Better than you see yourself. Dante closed the book, his hand trembling. He felt a wave of shame wash over him. He had treated her like furniture, like a ghost, and she had been watching him with this much tenderness. The double doors to the ICU swung open. Dr. Evans, the chief surgeon, stepped out. He pulled his surgical mask down. He looked exhausted. Dante stepped forward, invading the doctor's personal space. Tell me. Dr. Evans took a deep breath. We got the bullets out. We repaired the perforated bowel and the lung. But she's lost a massive amount of blood. Her body is in shock. She's in a coma, Mr. Moretti. Will she wake up? The next 48 hours are critical. If she wakes up, she has a long road. If she doesn't. The doctor didn't finish the sentence. Dante nodded slowly. She stays in the VIP suite. I want a guard at the door 24/7. Nobody goes in or out except you and my mother. And you? Dr. Evans asked. I'm not leaving, Dante said, sitting down in the uncomfortable chair next to the window that looked into her room. I'm not going anywhere until she opens her eyes. Lucia watched her son. She had tried to set him up with heiresses, daughters of other dons, models. He had rejected them all. He was cold, distant. But looking at him now, clutching a cheap sketchbook, watching a dying maid through a glass window, Lucia realized something terrifying. The bullet hadn't just hit Sofia. It had woken Dante up. Rico, Dante said without looking away from the window. Yeah, boss. Find out everything about Sofia Valenti. Her debts, her family, her favorite food, her childhood pets, everything. And send a message to the Sabatinis. What's the message? Dante turned. His eyes were no longer stormy. They were dead calm, the calm of a reaper. Tell Lorenzo Sabatini that he missed, and tell him that for every drop of Sofia's blood that touched the floor, I'm going to take a member of his family, starting with his business partners. As Rico hurried off to make the call, Dante walked into the ICU room. The air hissed with the sound of the ventilator. He pulled a chair up to her bedside. He took her limp, cold hand in his. It was rougher than the hands of the women he usually dated. It was a worker's hand. "You said you didn't want me to be sad," Dante whispered to the unconscious girl. "Then wake up, Sophia. Because if you don't, sadness will be the only thing left." He opened the sketchbook again to the drawing of him on the balcony. He traced the lines of his own face. "What else have you been hiding, Sophia?" he wondered. Little did Dante know the sketchbook was the least of the secrets Sophia Valenti held. The real twist was something even his mother didn't know. Something that would change the war between the Morettis and the Sabatinis forever. The monitor beeped steadily. Beep, beep, beep. It was the countdown to a war, and the countdown to a love story that was already written in blood. 3 days, 72 hours. That was how long Dante Moretti had been sitting in the stiff leather armchair beside Sophia's bed. He hadn't shaved. He hadn't changed his clothes, save for discarding the blood-stained tuxedo jacket. He looked less like the Prince of New York and more like a man haunting his own life. The private clinic was a fortress. Rico had stationed guards at every entrance, exit, and elevator landing. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Sophia hadn't moved. Machines breathed for her, a rhythmic hiss-click that was slowly driving Dante insane. He had spent the hours studying her face. Without the servant's mask of invisibility, she was striking. High cheekbones, a softness to her jaw that he wanted to touch but didn't dare. "Boss!" Rico's voice broke the silence. He stood in the doorway, holding a thick manila envelope. He looked uncomfortable. "We got the background check back. The deep dive." Dante didn't look up from Sophia's hand.
"And? Does she have any debt? Is she in trouble?"
"It's complicated," Rico said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. "You need to see this." Dante finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed but sharp. "Just tell me, Rico." "Her name isn't Sophia Valenti," Rico said, dropping the bomb. Dante frowned. "What?" "Valenti was her mother's maiden name. She started using it when she was 10. Her father's name is on the original birth certificate we pulled from the archives in Jersey." Rico took a breath, bracing himself. Her father was Frank the Rat Castellano. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante stood up slowly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Frank Castellano? The man who sold my father out to the feds 20 years ago? The man my father executed in the basement of the old warehouse?" "The same." Rico nodded grimly. "After Frank was taken out, his wife and kid disappeared. We thought they skipped town. Turns out, the mother changed their names and took a housekeeping job right under our noses. Sophia has been living in the house of the man who killed her father for 2 decades. Dante looked back at the unconscious girl. The tenderness he had felt moments ago evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard knot of suspicion. "She's a plant," Dante whispered, his voice lethal. "She's been waiting, biding her time. The shy maid act. It was all a cover." "That's what I thought too," Rico said. "But then, why take the bullets? If she wanted revenge, she could have poisoned your coffee 1,000 times. She could have let the Sabatini shooter kill your mother. Instead, she jumped in front of the gun." Dante paced the small room, his mind racing. It didn't make sense. Frank Castellano was a traitor, a rat. In their world, the sins of the father were visited upon the children. By all laws of the Mafia, Sophia should have grown up hating the Morettis. She should have been plotting their downfall every time she scrubbed their floors. Maybe she regretted it, Dante muttered. Maybe she panicked. Or maybe, Rico suggested quietly, she's not her father. Dante walked over to the bed. He looked at her differently now. He looked for the deceit. He looked for the treachery in her sleeping face. But all he saw was the girl who had sketched him with a look of hope in his eyes. "Get out," Dante ordered Rico. "Leave the file." "Boss, I said get out." Rico nodded and retreated. Dante opened the file. There were photos of a young Sophia, 10 years old, crying at a funeral. A funeral for an empty casket because the Morettis never gave Frank's body back. There were school records, straight as. nursing school applications, and then a letter. It was old, folded and refolded 100 times. It was in the file because Rico's guys had raided her small apartment above the garage. Dante unfolded it. It was addressed to Sophia. My dearest Sophie, if you are reading this, I am gone. I made mistakes. Bad ones. I tried to play a game I couldn't win. The Morettis are dangerous, but they are men of code. I broke the code. Do not hate them for what they do to me. Hate the life, hate the game. But promise me you will be better. Promise me you will save lives, not take them. Be the light, Sophie. Don't let the darkness take you like it took me. Love, Dad. Dante's hand lowered. She wasn't a spy. She was a penance. She had been living in the lion's den, not to kill the lions, but to prove she was better than the rat who sired her. You foolish girl, Dante whispered, the anger draining out of him, leaving only a profound, aching sadness. You didn't have to prove anything. Suddenly the heart monitor spiked. Beep, 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 beep. Sophia's eyelids fluttered. A low moan escaped her lips. Dante dropped the letter. He was at her side in an instant, forgetting the anger, forgetting the name Castellano. All that mattered was that she was waking up. Sophia? He leaned close, his voice urgent. Can you hear me? Her eyes opened. They were glassy, unfocused. She blinked, trying to clear the fog of anesthesia and pain. Slowly, her gaze locked onto his face. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. She winced, her hand flying to her stomach where the bandages were thickest. Don't move, Dante commanded, his voice gentle but firm. You've been shot. You're in the clinic. You're safe. Sophia stared at him. Then, a single tear leaked from the corner of her eye. Mrs. Moretti? She rasped, her voice like sandpaper. She's fine, Dante said. She's at home. Safe. Because of you. Sophia closed her eyes, letting out a breath she seemed to have been holding for days. Good. Why? Dante asked. He hadn't meant to ask it yet. He wanted to wait until she was stronger. But the question burned a hole in his tongue. Why did you do it? You know who you are. You know who I am. You know what my father did to yours. Sophia's eyes snapped open. Fear, sharp and sudden, flooded her gaze. She tried to pull her hand away from his, but he held it tight. You know, she whispered. It wasn't a question. I know, Dante said. I know you are Frank Castellano's daughter. I know you've been hiding in my house for 20 years. I didn't. She started to hyperventilate. The monitor began to wail. I didn't come to hurt you. I swear, I needed a job. My mum was sick. We had nowhere to go. Calm down, Dante said, bringing his face inches from hers. Sophia, look at me. Breathe. I'm sorry, she sobbed, the pain in her abdomen flaring with every gasp. Please don't kill me, please. The words hit Dante harder than the bullets had hit her. Please don't kill me. That was what she thought of him. That was what she expected. Nobody is going to kill you, Dante said, his voice fierce. You saved my mother. You took 5 bullets for the family that executed your father. By the laws of the street, I owe you 5 lives. You are untouchable, Sophia. Do you understand? You are under my protection. Sophia looked at him, searching for the lie. She didn't find one. Why? She asked weakly. Dante looked at the letter on the bedside table. Then he looked back at her. Because, he said, brushing a stray hair from her forehead, I am tired of the darkness too. Recovery was a slow, agonizing process. For 2 weeks, Sophia lived in the gray area between waking and sleeping. The pain was a constant companion, a fire in her gut that never fully went out. But Dante was a constant companion too. He moved his office into the clinic. He sat in the corner, reviewing contracts, ordering hits on the Sabatini organization, and managing the empire from a laptop. He slept on the uncomfortable couch. He ate the terrible hospital food. Sophia watched him. She saw the man behind the myth. She saw how he rubbed his temples when he was stressed. She saw how he checked his phone every 5 minutes when his mother was out of the house. They didn't talk much about the past. It was a truce, an unspoken agreement to exist in this strange bubble where the maid and the mob boss were equals. One rainy Tuesday, Sophia finally managed to sit up without feeling like she was being torn in half. Dante was there, instantly, fluffing the pillows behind her back. "You're getting stronger," he observed. "I have a good nurse," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. Dante paused. He looked at her, his expression intense. "Why did you draw me?" Sophia froze. "You saw the book. My mother found it." "Why did you draw me, Sophia?" She looked down at her hands. "Because you looked lonely. Everyone sees the power, the money, the gun. I saw the weight." Dante was silent for a long time. Then he stood up and walked to the window. The rain lashed against the glass, blurring the lights of New York City. "The Sabatinis are pushing," he said, changing the subject abruptly. "Since the shooting, they think we're weak. They think because I haven't burnt the city down yet, I've lost my edge." "Have you?" Sophia asked. Dante turned to look at her. His silhouette was dark against the rainy window. "I'm waiting. They don't know you're alive. They think the maid died. They think Lucia is traumatized. They're getting careless. What happens when they find out I'm alive?" "They won't," Dante said. "Not until I'm ready." Suddenly, the door burst open. It wasn't Rico, it was a nurse, but her eyes were wide, terrified. A gun was pressed to the back of her head. Behind her stood a man in a black tactical vest, a Sabatini soldier. "Surprise," the man sneered. Dante didn't flinch. He didn't reach for a weapon. He stood perfectly still. "Let her go," Dante said calmly. "Not a chance, Moretti. We heard a rumor you were spending a lot of time here. Lorenzo thought you might be lonely." The soldier shoved the nurse forward, raising his gun toward Dante. Sophia didn't think. The instinct that had saved Lucia kicked in again. But she couldn't run. She couldn't jump. "Dante, get down," she screamed. She grabbed the glass pitcher of water from her bedside table and hurled it. It was a weak throw, but it smashed against the wall near the gunman's head. The distraction was enough. In the split second the gunman flinched, Dante moved. He was a blur of violence. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing the gunman's wrist and twisting it until the bone snapped with a sickening crunch. The gun fell to the floor. Dante didn't stop. He slammed the man's head into the doorframe. Once, twice, 3 times. The soldier crumpled to the floor, unconscious or worse. The nurse screamed and ran into the hallway. Dante stood over the body, his chest heaving. He looked wild, dangerous. He turned to Sophia. She was shaking, clutching her stitches. "Are you okay?" he demanded, rushing to her. I'm fine," she stuttered. "How did they get in?" "Insider," Dante growled. "Someone on the payroll sold us out. We have to move. Now. Move. I can barely walk," Sophia protested. "Then I'll carry you," Dante said. He ripped the IVs out of her arm. He didn't wait for her permission. He wrapped her in the blanket, scooped her up into his arms, and kicked the door open. The hallway was chaos. Alarms were blaring. Rico was running toward them, gun drawn. 2 other bodyguards flanking him. "Boss, Sabatini hit squad. They came up the service elevator. We got 3 down, 2 more coming up the stairs. Clear a path to the exit," Dante ordered, adjusting his grip on Sophia. "We're going to the safe house." "The safe house?" Rico's eyes widened. "Boss, that's 2 hours upstate. She won't make the trip without medical gear." "She dies if she stays here?" Dante snapped. "Move!" They ran. Dante carried her through the service corridors, shielding her body with his own as gunfire erupted in the lobby. Sophia buried her face in his neck, smelling the scent of expensive cologne and gunpowder. They burst out into the alleyway where an armored SUV was waiting. Dante shoved her into the back seat and climbed in after her, pulling her onto his lap as the car screeched away. As they sped through the rain-slicked streets of the Bronx, leaving the wailing sirens behind, Sophia looked up at Dante. "You saved me," she whispered. Dante looked down at her. His face was hard, but his hand was stroking her hair, a repetitive, soothing motion he didn't seem to realize he was doing. "We're even," he said. But as the city lights faded and the darkness of the highway swallowed them, they both knew it wasn't true. They weren't even. They were entangled, bound by blood, by secrets, and now by a war that was just beginning. And in the trunk of the car, unknown to Sofia, lay the real reason the Sabatinis had come for her. It wasn't just to kill Dante. It was because the Sabatinis knew who she really was. Frank Castellano hadn't just been a rat. He had been the keeper of the Sabatini family's darkest secret. A secret he had hidden in his daughter. The safe house wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as a hunting cabin, buried deep in the Catskills, surrounded by miles of dense, snow-dusted pine forest. The storm that had started in the city had turned into a blizzard here, sealing them off from the world. Dante kicked the heavy oak door shut, locking it with 3 separate deadbolts. He carried Sofia to the leather couch in front of the massive stone fireplace. She was shivering, her skin clammy, her teeth chattering so hard she couldn't speak. "Stay with me," Dante commanded, his voice tight. He stripped off his wet jacket and threw it aside. "Rico, get the generator running and check the perimeter. I need the medical kit from the bathroom, now!" Rico nodded and vanished into the darkness of the hallway. Dante knelt beside Sofia. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the cold reality of her condition. Her stitches had held miraculously, but she was exhausted, dehydrated, and in shock. "Dante," she whispered, her hand gripping his forearm. "My locket. Where is my locket?" Dante frowned. "Forget the jewelry, Sofia. You're bleeding." "No." She tried to sit up, panic flaring in her eyes. "I need it. My father gave it to me. It's all I have left of him." "Please," Dante sighed. He reached into his pocket. He had grabbed it from the bedside table at the clinic before carrying her out. It was a cheap, tarnished silver heart on a flimsy chain. He dangled it in front of her. "This?" Sofia snatched it from his hand, clutching it to her chest like a lifeline. "Thank you." Dante watched her, the way she held that cheap piece of metal. It was desperate, protective. "Let me look at the wound," Dante said, his voice softening. He lifted her shirt, his fingers brushing against her warm skin. The bandages were soaked, but the wound was closed. He cleaned it with steady hands, applying fresh gauze. Sofia hissed in pain, but didn't pull away. "You have good hands," she murmured, watching him. "For a man who kills people." Dante paused. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. The firelight danced in his dark irises, making them look like molten gold. "I don't kill people because I like it, Sofia. I kill them because if I don't, they kill the people I love." He taped the bandage down. "Like my mother, like you." The air in the room shifted. It became heavy, charged with something that wasn't just gratitude. It was the pull of gravity between 2 planets on a collision course. "Why did your father give you that locket?" Dante asked, nodding at the silver heart resting on her collarbone. "He said it was my insurance," Sofia said quietly. "He told me, if you ever get into trouble, really bad trouble, open it, but only then." Dante's eyes narrowed. "Open it." "What?" "Open it, Sofia. Your father was Frank Castellano. He didn't deal in sentimentality, he dealt in leverage." Sofia hesitated. Her fingers trembled as she found the small latch on the side of the heart. It clicked open. Inside there was no picture, no lock of hair. There was a tiny folded piece of microfilm. Dante's breath hitched. He held out his hand. "Give it to me." Sofia placed the film in his palm. Dante stood up and walked to the desk, grabbing a magnifying glass from the drawer. He held the film up to the light of the fire. Silence stretched for a minute, then 2. When Dante turned around, his face was pale. "What is it?" Sofia asked. "It's not just a locket," Dante said, his voice low and dangerous. "It's the graveyard." "The what?" "The Sabatini graveyard. This film. It contains the bank account numbers for every offshore account Lorenzo Sabatini has, but more than that, it has the GPS coordinates of where they buried the bodies. The judges, the union leaders, the senator's missing daughter." Sofia gasped. "My father, he stole this." "He didn't just steal it. He was their accountant, Sofia. He was the one who hid the bodies, and when he tried to get out, he took the map with him." Dante looked at her with a mixture of awe and horror. "You have been walking around with the power to destroy the entire Sabatini crime family around your neck for 20 years. That's why they want me. Sophia realized, her voice trembling. They don't want to kill me for saving your mother. They want the locket. They want you, Dante corrected, because only you know how to decrypt the accounts. Look. He pointed to the film. It requires a biometric key, a retina scan, or a fingerprint. Mine, yours. Dante walked back to the couch and sat down heavily. He looked at the girl he had ignored for years, the girl who had saved his life, the girl who held the keys to the kingdom. We have to burn it, Sophia said suddenly. Dante looked at her. What? Destroy it. If they catch us, if they get this, they win. Burn it, Dante. Dante shook his head. A slow, terrifying smile spread across his face. No, Sophia, we're not going to burn it. He reached out and took her hand, interlacing their fingers. We're going to use it. We're going to trade it. Trade it for what? For their heads. The plan was simple. Insane, but simple. Dante used the encrypted satellite phone to call Lorenzo Sabatini. The conversation was short. I have the girl. I have the locket. Meet me at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, midnight, alone. If you're lying, Moretti, I will kill every person you have ever met, Lorenzo had hissed. If you're late, I upload the files to the FBI, Dante had countered. Now they were in the car, speeding back toward the city. The storm had broken, leaving the roads slick with black ice. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, dressed in a tactical vest Dante had forced her to wear under her coat. She looked at him. He was checking his weapon, a Sig Sauer P226 with methodical precision. You don't have to do this, she said. We could run. We have the money. We could go to Europe. Dante didn't look up. There is no running, Sophia, not in this life. You either rule or you kneel. I don't kneel. And what about me? She asked softly. Am I just the bait? Dante slammed the magazine into the gun and turned to her. He reached out, cupping her face in his hand. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You are not the bait, he said, his voice fierce. You are the queen, and tonight we take your throne. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hard, desperate, a promise of violence and devotion. Sophia kissed him back, tasting the danger on his lips. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible, she felt invincible. But as they pulled into the rusted gates of the Navy Yard, the reality of the situation crashed down. It was a trap. Of course it was a trap. Floodlights blinded them as soon as they stepped out of the car. Dozens of red laser dots danced on Dante's chest. Lorenzo Sabatini stood on a shipping container, surrounded by 20 armed men. He was an old man, rot eating him from the inside out, but his eyes were sharp. You brought her, Lorenzo laughed, his voice echoing in the empty yard. I didn't think you had the stomach for it, Dante, selling out the girl who saved your mother, cold, even for a Moretti. Dante stood his ground, shielding Sophia with his body. I'm not selling her, I'm making a deposit. The locket, Lorenzo demanded. Throw it up here. Dante pulled the silver chain from his pocket. He held it up. The floodlights caught the metal. Come and get it, Dante challenged. Kill him, Lorenzo ordered. But keep the girl alive. The gunmen raised their rifles. But before they could fire, a sound ripped through the air. Click. It wasn't a gun. It was the sound of a PA system turning on. Suddenly, a voice boomed through the shipyard speakers. It was a recording. This is Lorenzo Sabatini. The date is November 4th, 1998. The payment for Judge McKinnon is $2 million. The body is in the foundation of the new stadium. Lorenzo froze. His face went white. Dante smiled. He hadn't just brought the locket. He had given it to Rico hours ago. Rico was currently at the New York Times office, broadcasting the audio files live. What did you do? Lorenzo screamed. I told you, Dante shouted back. I don't kneel. Kill them all, Lorenzo shrieked. The shooting started. Dante grabbed Sophia and threw her behind a stack of steel beams. Bullets sparked against the metal, a deadly rain of lead. Stay down, Dante roared, returning fire. He was a marksman, dropping 2 Sabatini soldiers with 2 shots, but there were too many of them. They were pinned down. Dante, Sophia yelled over the noise. The crane, she pointed up. Above Lorenzo's container, a massive rusted crane hook dangled, held by a single cable. "Can you hit the cable?" she asked. Dante looked up. It was a 100-foot shot, in the dark, under fire. "Trust me," Sophia said. Dante looked at her. He didn't hesitate. He broke cover, rolling across the concrete. Bullets kicked up dust around his feet. He dropped to one knee, aimed and exhaled. Bang! The cable snapped. The massive steel hook, weighing 2 tons, plummeted. It didn't hit Lorenzo directly. It hit the shipping container he was standing on. The container crumpled like a soda can. The impact threw Lorenzo and his guards off their feet, sending them crashing to the ground below. The shockwave knocked the other gunman off balance. "Now!" Dante yelled. Siren wails cut through the night. The police, the FBI, Rico had timed it perfectly. "Let's go." Dante grabbed Sophia's hand. They didn't run toward the police. They ran toward the water, where a small speedboat was waiting. As they sped away into the harbor, watching the flashing lights swarm the Navy yard, Dante pulled Sophia close. The Sabatini Empire was crumbling behind them, destroyed not by bullets but by the truth hidden in a silver heart. Spring in New York usually brought rain and slush, but tonight the air over the Moretti estate was crisp, scented with blooming jasmine and the expensive perfume of the city's elite. The expansive gardens behind the mansion had been transformed into a sea of silk, tuxedos and hushed conversations. 6 months had passed since the night at the Navy Yard. 6 months since the Sabatini Empire had crumbled into dust, dismantled by the FBI files hidden inside a cheap silver locket. Lorenzo Sabatini was rotting in a federal supermax, and the streets were quiet. But tonight wasn't about the war. Tonight was about the peace. Dante Moretti stood on the limestone balcony of the master suite, looking down at the party below. He held a glass of scotch, the amber liquid catching the light of the crystal chandeliers strung through the trees. He wasn't drinking it. He was just holding it, grounding himself. For 32 years, Dante had looked at these parties and seen only threats. He had scanned crowds for wires, for knives, for betrayals. But tonight, the tension in his shoulders was gone. The predator inside him was finally sleeping. "You're brooding again." A soft voice came from the doorway behind him. "I thought we agreed that brooding was strictly for Tuesdays." Dante turned, and for a moment the breath left his lungs. Sophia Valenti stood in the frame of the French doors. The invisible girl in the black uniform and white apron was gone. In her place stood a woman who looked like she could command armies. She wore a gown of deep, midnight blue velvet that hugged her frame like a second skin, leaving her shoulders bare. But it wasn't the dress that drew the eye. It was the scar. A faint, jagged line was visible just above the neckline of her dress, the highest of the 5 bullet wounds. She didn't hide it with makeup. She didn't cover it with jewelry. She wore it like a medal of honor. "I'm not brooding," Dante said, setting his glass down on the stone railing. He walked toward her, his eyes dark with an emotion he no longer tried to suppress. "I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" Sophia asked, stepping into his space. She smelled of vanilla and gunpowder, a scent that was entirely her own. "For you," Dante murmured. He reached out, his rough thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "Every minute I'm not looking at you feels like a wasted minute." Sophia smiled, but her eyes held a lingering sadness. "They're talking about us down there, you know. The whispers are louder than the music." "Let them talk," Dante said dismissively. "They say I'm the daughter of a rat," Sophia whispered, the old insecurity bleeding into her voice. "They say Frank Castellano's blood runs in my veins. They wonder if I'm a spy, or a mistress, or a fool." Dante's expression hardened. He took her hand, his grip firm. "Then let's go down there and tell them exactly who you are." Dante, no. Sophia, yes. He didn't give her a chance to argue. He led her out of the bedroom, down the grand marble staircase that she used to scrub on her hands and knees. The music stopped as they descended. The conversation died. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward them. The silence was heavy, suffocating. The elite of the underworld watched the Don and the maid. They saw the way he held her hand, not like a possession, but like an anchor. Dante stopped at the bottom of the stairs. He looked out at the sea of faces, captains, politicians, rivals who had bent the knee. 6 months ago, Dante's voice rang out, deep and commanding, filling the cavernous hall. This family was almost destroyed. 5 bullets were fired in the Pierre Hotel. They were meant for my mother. They were meant to end the Moretti line. He paused, looking at Sophia. She stood tall, her chin lifted, defying the judgment of the room. But they didn't kill us, Dante continued, because someone stepped in front of the gun. A woman who owed us nothing, a woman whose father was my enemy. She took the fire, she took the pain, and she asked for nothing in return. Dante turned to Sophia, ignoring the crowd completely now. He reached into his tuxedo pocket. You once told me you were invisible, Sophia. You spent 20 years hiding in the shadows of this house, sketching life instead of living it. He produced a small velvet box. He didn't kneel. Kings do not kneel, and queens do not need them to. Instead, he opened the box to reveal a ring that made the chandeliers look dim. It was a rare blood-red ruby, surrounded by a halo of black diamonds. The shadows are gone, Dante said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper that only she could hear. I don't want a mistress. I don't want a girlfriend. I need a partner. I need someone who knows the cost of this life and chooses it anyway. He took the ring from the box. Sophia Valenti, you took 5 bullets for the past. Will you take this ring for the future? Sophia looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. She thought of the sketchbook hidden under her mattress. She thought of the hospital room. She thought of the cold wind in the Catskills. She extended her hand. Her fingers were steady. Yes, she said, I will. Dante slid the ring onto her finger. It was heavy, a weight of promise and power. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't a polite society kiss. It was possessive, fierce, and consuming. The room erupted. Applause, cheers, the clinking of glasses. The whispers of Traitor's Daughter vanished, replaced by a new title, one that would be spoken with fear and reverence from the Bronx to Sicily. Dante broke the kiss and looked down at her, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. Ready to run the world? He asked. Sophia touched the scar on her shoulder, then the ring on her finger. She looked at the crowd, then back at the man who had given her a voice. I'm ready, she said. The invisible girl was gone. The Iron Queen had a successor. And as the orchestra swelled into a waltz, Sophia Moretti stepped onto the dance floor, finally, perfectly, in the light. They say that in the underworld, love is a weakness. But for Dante Moretti and Sophia Valenti, it was the only weapon that mattered. Sophia didn't just take bullets for a boss, she took a chance on a man who had forgotten how to feel. In the end, the most dangerous thing Sophia ever did wasn't jumping in front of a gun. It was loving a monster enough to make him human again. If this story moved you, if you felt the tension and the passion, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have hundreds of stories just like this one waiting for you. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a chapter. Tell us in the comments. Would you have forgiven the daughter of your enemy? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.